Hey everybody, Gilligan Kruger 0829 here, and I don't know where to start really. I haven't written this out or anything. I didn't think it would be right to write out a review. I thought just to talk it over from memory and off the top of my head would make it more better. So, you all know what day it is. September 11th, 2011. And it's been a decade since the fated World Trade Center attacks in New York City occurred, which now result in the worst attack on American soil that's ever happened. And 10 years, people. This chaos happened. It doesn't feel too long ago, actually, myself. But I'm just looking back at it, that has it really been a decade? And everything that has happened since then has been, we've mentioned this has been in our memory, because this has changed the face of America for all those years, and it just has impacted us, our generation especially, in such a way. Like, I'm sure we all remember what happened that day, just like the generation before us remembered when JFK was assassinated, and the generation before that remembered where they were when Pearl Harbor was bombed. So, most all of us probably have a story to tell for where we were that day, and I'm here to talk about mine, among other things. So, September 11th, 2001, I would have been in 4th grade. I just turned 10, about 2 weeks, actually, a little less than 2 weeks before that day, and it was just another day in 4th grade math class. And the ironic thing is, believe it or not, nobody even told me about it in school. None of the teachers told me. No one came in. There wasn't a principal. I think my principal's name was Dr. Timms or something, but that's beyond the point. No one came in and told us, in fact, so I had no idea. I'm not sure if the other grades were told, but it was kind of silent. It wasn't until I was leaving school and coming to meet my mom to pick me up that she came to me and said, "You know what's happened today, right?" And since in the weeks before that I had heard a lot of stories about shark attacks, that's what I at first assumed it was. I remember looking at my mom saying, "Did another person get killed by a shark?" And my mom is thinking, "No, the World Trade Center has been bombed." And honestly, I hadn't known what the World Trade Center was before that. I mean, I'd seen it in movies, but I couldn't recognize it at the time, but I had no idea how important that was. And as soon as I heard that, I was in my car, we were driving home. We actually stopped at a little market called Mr. T's, where I'd usually stop at after elementary school to pick up snacks or something. I think it's still there. But then we went home and we turned on the TV, and it was on every single channel. And I'm not sure if that was right before or right after the second plane hit the second structure, but again, it was on every channel. It had taken over cable, and we were talking about it for years after that. We still are talking about that day. And again, what's ironic to me is that nobody even told me the first day. We didn't even start talking about it till 2-3 days later. We were all like, please give a moment for the people who gave their lives September 11th, or the people who lost theirs. And I'm just shocked because, again, as I think I said earlier, I heard teachers, when JFK was assassinated, would run into schools and crying, mind you, and have their classes go home. That's how much it shaped it. But nobody told us. Nobody told me anyway, and no one told my brother because he wasn't aware of it either. So that's the story of what happened 10 years ago on September 11th, 2001. God, has it really been 10 years? I mean, things have changed since then. I mean, I didn't know Grey X Ninja or Shadow 1892 or any of the guys you see in my midnight premiere videos back then. And I haven't even started to talk about the people that lost their lives that day. That I've kind of ignored that, and I feel like an asshole for doing that because I think I've heard many numbers for how many people died that day. I think it's 3,500, but I've heard as many as 5,000. One of the kids I knew in 4th grade, a few days after September 11th, told me that more people died in the World Trade Center bombings than at Pearl Harbor and on the Titanic put together. And that was at least 3,600 people. So either way, it's still the biggest American catastrophe to this day. Nothing has come up to match it. And I just want to say to everyone watching who had family members who were working at the World Trade Center, who were helping to save the World Trade Center, like the firefighters, they're the heroes of the world, really. Or even people who had family members that were going to go and just missed out. Like, again, I've heard people tell me stories that they had uncles who were going to work that day and they missed their planes and were late. So they're kind of the lucky ones, but I'm drifting off topic. I just want to say, for all of the people who had family members who were lost that day, their losses will not be forgotten. We all remember them. We all will remember the sacrifices they gave for us. And it's shaped our nation, and they will not be forgotten. I know that's kind of stereotypic cliche, but really, let's face it, it's the truth. These people lost their lives that day. Probably just any other boring work day that was when the world was changed that day. And looking back, it's just a lot to fathom. So, and do you guys have any stories that you want to tell about where you were on September 11th, 2001? If you don't want to, I'll completely understand. If you do, comment in the section below. I'd love to hear it. Maybe we could relate about something. And again, if you're watching this and you have family members or had family members who were lost that day or almost lost that day, my great apologies to you. I hope harmony has finally returned, but I really can't say anything. The loss of a loved one is always a painful experience, and I think we can all relate to that. But not in the situation some of you guys were feeling, so my greatest respect and honor for you guys, and that's pretty much all I have to say. So remember 9/11, 2001.